willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, because we gave them the benefit of the doubt and they just tried to install communism. And I know I've said that a bunch already in this show, so I'll lay off, but it's so, well, I mean, we are going to talk about that later in the show. James Lindsay's got a new movie out, and it's interesting because it's very on the nose. And I think if you don't call it out, then there's no chance in derailing it. If I pussyfoot around and don't actually say it out loud, it's like not saying Voldemort, right? Like, you can't do that. You've got to face the fears. That's actually where you've got to go. That's the thing. That's what you've got to do. So leaning in, right? There's lots to get to. Oh, one other thing. There's a land grab. The Ford government wanted to do a land grab for industrial park, and it was in a bunch of farmland in the Woolwich area, and the farmers won. The Ford government backed off. They said, we're not going to do this anymore. There won't be any more destruction of crops, because there was destruction of crops. So there's a win there. It's a small win. The Ford government's still a liberal government. We should get rid of them in favor of a conservative government, an actual conservative government that's going to actually try and conserve things like the way of life in Canada and things like that. Anyway, regardless, there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we start with Elliot Ellen Page, James Lindsay, and he's an anti-communist. He says, let's help free Canada. Okay, yes, please help us, because apparently we can't help ourselves. Wall Street Silver says, Canada, is everything okay up there? We're worried about you. The Canada you grew up in, Ellen Page. The Canada you live in now, Elliot Page, right? Like, demure and sad. It's not so good in Canada anymore. Maxime Bernier is responding to Jodica. Sorry if I'm getting that wrong. I'm terribly getting that wrong. She says, 2 weeks and I leave my neighborhood of 35 years because of rampant mass immigration. It's no longer a Canadian neighborhood. You don't hear English. You only hear Punjabi. As I pack up my home, room by room, I curse every corrupt politician and woke ignorant liberal in Canada. And I mean, yeah, the problem is rampant and everywhere. And Maxime Bernier says, Canada is becoming unrecognizable because of mass immigration. Yep. Patrick Brown, the mayor of Brampton, says, today, city of Brampton celebrated Pakistan's Independence Day by raising the Pakistani flag in honor of this special day. The city of Brampton appreciates and recognizes the diverse contributions of Pakistani culture to our vibrant community today and every day. Thank you to all who gather to mark this important day. Canada Day didn't get fireworks in Guelph. And in a bunch of places. We in Guelph had the people who usually run it, and that's usually the Rotary Club, announce less than 6 weeks before July 1st that they wouldn't be able to do it this year because they didn't have enough volunteers. And the city of Guelph said, oh man, shucks darn, we can't step in. It's not enough notice. I am interested in how they can pull this kind of stuff off for a different country and not for Canada, right? Like, we're going to celebrate a different country's Independence Day. Yay, different country. And for Canada, just be quiet, right? We're trying to celebrate some balkanization here, right? Like, Patrick says, not Patrick Brown, a different Patrick, says road closures. This guy's in the UK. Road closures and huge police support for Pakistan Independence Day in Britain at the moment. Meanwhile, we have a parish hall in Norfolk worried about whether the Union flag is too divisive for their village. We are so weak. Yeah, we really need to, and like the West needs to reassert itself, because if you say our culture is awful and terrible, well, people are just going to come in and say, okay, yeah, your culture's awful and terrible, and look whose culture isn't ours, so we'll just, replace yours with ours. Alberta Leonidas says, gotta love that Sharia state. Glad we offer Sharia mortgages in Alberta now. Dr. Malouf says, in Pakistan, a female TikToker was molested, groped, sexually assaulted, and stripped naked by hundreds of Pakistan Muslim men during a Pakistan Independence Day event in Lahore. So there you go. Name not related. So it's interesting. We've got a situation where on one side of things, people are packing up and leaving their neighborhoods that they've been in for decades. And on the other side of things, Brampton is celebrating Pakistani Independence Day. And I mean, isn't that strange? Doesn't anybody find that weird? right? The politicians don't seem to find that weird. The politicians lean into it and try and get votes, right? Darshan Maharaja highlights the damage being done by these policies to the migrants themselves. So these people are victims as much as we're victims of our bad politicians' bad policies. He says, Lima fraud. I was honored to partner with Bloomberg Business for this report. As far as I know, this is the most in-depth report of this corrupt mess. The link is not paywalled until August 21st. Please share this widely so we can get rid our country of this menace. And it says, migrant workers are lured to Canada are being scammed out of their life savings. So they're sold a story that is not real. They spend money to try and make the fantasy real for them, and it's a scam. And I mean, Canada as a country is in on it. Anyway, Darshan continues. He says, I'm deeply grateful to all the people who responded to my appeal to provide firsthand accounts of this corruption. Sadly, they must remain anonymous. These fine Canadians are the unsung heroes of this report. I salute them. And he goes through all of this. So check out the report if you're interested. But fundamentally, it's a scam being run to cheapen labor, suppress wages. And I mean, look at what it's doing to the labor market in Canada. Look at what it's doing to wages. Look at our kids can't find jobs, and that's a problem, right? And it wasn't a problem in previous years. It is a problem this year. And why? Because rules have been changed and nobody's doing anything to fix it. Bad policy is the order of the day. Kean says, documents reveal the federal Liberals are running a covert operation to redistribute immigrant labor and newcomer families out of big cities and into primarily rural areas in northern Ontario and western Canada. So I was driving through Mildmay and Harrison and all up there in Durham, right? On the way to where were we? Port Elgin. We were going to Port Elgin. And so I was driving through there and I saw a big hotel or a big building, and it looked like about 100 units. And somebody messaged me and they said, actually I think it was in Harrison, but now I can't remember where it was. So apologies. My brain is leaky sometimes. Anyway, so they said it's actually in this little city, and there's no parking for the building. So nobody's meant to have a car, and the units are really, really tiny. So they want to have, 100 people injected into that community. So that community has 500 people, 1,000 people. You're going to get 100 people just in that building, plus anywhere else they can get. They're going to inject all of these people and change the face of the country. Why are we accepting this invasion? This is an attack. It is not normal, and we should not tolerate it. Canada Proud says Trudeau's incompetence is going to get Canadians killed. So he can't explain how the Trudeau Liberals let a terrorist into Canada. And again, I mean, I didn't expect him to be able to explain himself because he's an ideological puppet. Like, he's just being controlled by people above him, right? He's an actor. That's all he is. But still, here is Justin Trudeau trying to respond to this question. He pivots away. He doesn't actually answer the question. Here we go.
One of the two men charged with plotting the terror attack in Toronto came to Canada from abroad and became a Canadian citizen after allegedly appearing in an ISIS video dismembering a prisoner. Can you tell us when and how he came to Canada?
This is obviously a very serious situation that the Minister of Public Safety is ensuring there are a full follow-up and understanding on exactly how this happened. I know investigations are ongoing, and the Minister will share all that we learned in the appropriate moment. But we're taking this extremely seriously because Canadians need to have confidence in our immigration system and on the millions of people who've come here over the past years to build a better life for themselves and their future. We need to make sure everything is done to keep Canadians safe.
Nope. He's not. He's just talking stump speech. Has nothing to do with reality. Here's Tracy, and Mark Miller is responding to this. The terror suspect could have citizenship revoked. And Tracy Wilson says, could have. So there's the chink in the armor, right? And David Mulrooney says, disgusted minister looking into revoking citizenship of Toronto terror suspect. Quote, I'm as disgusted as any Canadian, but I have a responsibility to get to the bottom of it, and I will. No, his responsibility was to make sure it didn't happen, and he failed. Yeah, that's the truth, right? And here is Freeland's Twitch, and they say, I was today years old when I found out an amendment to Bill C6 remove the clause allowing citizenship to be revoked for dual citizens convicted of terrorism. Thank you, Liberal Party, Bloc Québécois, NDP, and Green Party for voting this in. So this person says, unfortunately, Mark Miller can't, and he knows it. His best bud Trudeau reversed the Harper-era law, which would have allowed it. So yeah, you can't actually do that, despite the fact that they're trying to sell the idea that that's what they're going to do. CBC Watcher says it was the Trudeau Liberals who changed the rules to ramp up. Oh, this is not the one I wanted to show you. Hold on. Sheila Gunn Reid says in 2015 on Harper's Bill C-24 that would strip terrorists of their Canadian citizenship, the Liberal Party believes that terrorists should get to keep their Canadian citizenship, because I do, and I'm willing to take on anyone who disagrees with that. So there is a far left. Well, this is an insufferable speech. You can hear I'll play it, just a minute of it. And Trudeau warning, fair warning, because it's insufferable. But you can hear the acting in his voice. It's almost painful. One of the things a politician is supposed to do is hear the question of the person and then tell them how your policies are going to lean into that. And Justin Trudeau does that in kind of a perverted way. Like, he'll tell, well, and a lot of politicians do the same thing. We'll hear what you want to hear and then tell you exactly what you want to hear. And Justin Trudeau, you can hear it in his voice. It's, I don't know. I can't describe it. That's why I have to play this. So here's Justin Trudeau responding to this question. The question seems to be from somebody who's very, very ideologically against stripping terrorists of their citizenship rights. I guess he can't imagine a situation where a terrorist would do something that would cause people to be upset with them and want them to be removed from their country, I guess. Anyway, this is from back in the day in 2015 or before Justin Trudeau was elected. Here we go.
Since 1947, when the Mackenzie King government passed our first Citizenship Act, there was a promise to new Canadians that they could be full citizens, and it's been taken away in this. The idea of actually removing citizens and deporting somebody who might have been born here but happens to hold dual citizenship is absolutely disgusting.
Yep.
What are your views on it?
Yes. C-24, it's the bill that, for me, exemplifies the Conservatives' approach to politics. Because what they get to say with the Liberal Party's staunch opposition to C-24, because we absolutely and thoroughly oppose it, is that, and I'll give you the quote, so you guys can jot it down and put it in a tack ad somewhere, that the Liberal Party believes that terrorists should get to keep their Canadian citizenship.
Can we have an election now?
Because I do. And I'm willing to...
Does the crowd think this is a stand-up comedy routine? He just said the Liberal government believes that terrorists should keep their Canadian citizenships.
Take on anyone who disagrees with that. Because the question is...
Reframing.
As soon as you make citizenship for some Canadians conditional on good behavior, you devalue citizenship for everyone.
So when you let a terrorist in and allow them to commit heinous acts and can't do anything about it at all, what are you doing then? Unbelievable. CBC Watcher says it was the Trudeau Liberals who changed the rules to ramp up Canada's temporary foreign worker program, and now they're promising to punish anyone who's abusing it using the rules they changed. So a lot of these things the Liberals set up, and when they fail, like people expect them to fail because the programs aren't good, and then they blame the victims or people who just followed the rules as written out, even though the rules were terrible and led to multiple different disasters. The Road Knight is talking about Australia, not the United Kingdom. And same thing's kind of happening in Australia with regard to Gazan immigrants, etc. And the Road Knight says, the coalition says Gazan refugees should not be given visitor visas until biometric tests, face-to-face interviews, and ASIO assessments can be conducted. Why is this doubling down? Surely it's just common sense to keep Australians safe. And so they've already brought in a bunch of people from Gaza. Steve says, ridiculous that they would come all this way to Australia anyway. And the Road Knight says nearly 3,000 have. The Home Affairs Department yesterday revealed far more visitor visas have been rejected than granted for Palestinians since October 7th. Again, listen to the wording of this, because far more have been granted than, or far more have been denied than accepted. Sounds really good until you hear the numbers. Of the 10,000 visa applications, 7,000 have been rejected and 2,922 have been approved. So almost 3,000 people have been approved. If you just heard the 3,000, you'd be like, that's outrageous. But because you hear the 10,000 number first, you're like, oh, well, that's not so bad. It's a trick of the, light or whatever. It is a manipulation, and it's happening everywhere, right? We're just gonna build this building in Hanover to make housing more affordable for all the people who might want to live in 100 square foot apartments that just have a bed and a sink, right? Like, I mean, what? You have a problem with that? We're just trying to build housing. Sure. Housing for what? A standing invasion army of United Nations soldiers or what? I'm not sure. Rob Hunter says, it's tempting to think of Canada's immigration problems as the result of woke progressive ideology. No, I think of it as the problem of an invasion that's ongoing, but okay. Anyway, back to this. Actually, I think the mistakes we've made are more like bad COVID modeling. Our leaders had their experts run the numbers and determined that we needed significant increases in immigration, permanent temporary workers, students, to achieve strong economic growth, just like we needed masks and lockdowns and Swiss cheese to crush the curve and slow the spread. It all makes sense in theory. Every model makes perfect sense with the right inputs, but in reality, it's all crap. The assumptions are wrong. The inputs were wrong. The data was poor. The problem was more complex than a couple of simple variables. Garbage in, garbage out. So it's plausible that, but at the same time, this assumes people are trying to solve big problems, but then what? They put it into a computer model, completely close their eyes and say, do whatever the model says, do not question the model. It's kind of ridiculous. The COVID stuff was bad. It was a bad response, and they damn well knew it. And we know that they knew it. There's emails that have come out and talked about all this stuff. So when people say, like, the mistakes we've made were like the bad COVID modeling, if they mean that they purposely falsified models, that they fear-mongered, that they bought ads, that they instructed police to behave in ways that were counter to our Constitution, then yes, I would agree. But if you're trying to say that they got this COVID thing dropped in their laps and they panicked and asked people to put models together and then they used those models as gospel, I think this was much more coordinated than that. Much more coordinated than that. We did things counter to written down plans, and we fired people who pointed that out, right? We fired doctors who pointed out that this is actually a really bad idea, and what we're doing is wrong. We fired doctors who said, hey, you should probably have bodily autonomy and make up your own mind about whether you want to take this thing or not. And they got fired, right? I've interviewed them. And so, like, there's a problem with how we're responding to this. We look at things as if the people in charge are actually working for us, and it does not seem like that's a correct assumption. It seems like that is an erroneous assumption. That seems like it is a very incorrect assumption, and making that assumption is continuing to harm us, because they're going to flood all of small town everywhere, not just Ontario, but everywhere, with foreign people. And what's going to happen when they get their Order 66? What's happening in the United Kingdom? And what happens when you stand up and say, don't do that? You're going to get thrown in jail. And that's what they're aiming for. Why do I know that? Because that's what they're doing in England. So we ignore this at our peril. DC Drano is highlighting this disclosed TV thing that Jack Pozo is highlighting. I don't know why, but disclosed TV blocked me. I have no idea. I don't know. I don't think I even overuse them all that much, but whatever. Anyway, disclosed TV says United States taxpayers pay $451 billion per year for housing and care of illegal migrants. And Jack says they're all going back. Oh, man, I don't think so. I think that's the seeds of a civil war. I don't know. Oh, man. And not to say that you can't do it, because you absolutely should be able to remove illegal people from your country. But when you try and do that, And like, I feel it's going to be ham-fisted. Everything about this I've seen ham-fisted up to this point, and it seems like it's already ham-fisted. And so ham-fisted is clumsy, right? Like you're clumsy. You're trying to pick something up with your ham fists there. So it's already, the rollout's already been terrible, and I don't think that necessarily that's Trump's fault or anybody's fault. The media has a vested interest in making this rollout look as bad as possible, and so they're trying to do this. But stuff like this, when you pay $451 billion per year for housing and care of migrants, people are not going to want to do that. And I think you should be able to remove people from your country who are not helping your country, who are harming your country. And I think that while DC Drano says, I was going to say it's not going to touch it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to touch the actual problem. It's one of those things that, like, if you ever been to Florida or South Carolina or North Carolina or anything like that, along the coast, there's these big palmetto bugs, and they look like cockroaches, right? But like, so if you fumigate your building regularly, you don't see the bugs, and like the problem is kept under control, right? Like, you don't see it. It's fine. It's fine. It doesn't exist for all intents and purposes, but you know it's there. They have to keep fumigating, right? Like, and if they don't fumigate and you wake up and something's crawling on your face, you're like, get the fumigator in here now. So like, that's how I think that it'll go. It won't solve the problem. It'll be like, we just fumigate once a month, and it's like, oh my gosh, this thing just keeps coming back. Like, for every one cockroach we kill, there's another 100 hiding behind the floorboards, right? And so under the floor. Anyway, I think that's how it's going to happen. And like, maybe if you close the border fully, maybe you might start to make headway with the whole thing. But then you're going to have bleeding heart communists who believe in this diversity is our strength nonsense and can't see reality for when it's smacking them in the face with the jackboot, right? Like, and they're going to try to legislate change back to communist policies that we're enduring right now. And so it's the tick and the talk of the left and the right, but with communism mixed in. DC Drano says we could have 5 mass deportations and it still wouldn't crack $20 billion. Americans can repay a huge chunk of the national debt just by deporting all these expensive illegal aliens. So he's saying it would cost $20 billion instead of this almost $500 billion, and we should do it as soon as possible. And he's probably right. So, let's talk about our grab bag of governance, which is also a long series of tabs, so I hope we do this quick. Wide Awake Media is sharing this. Australian Senator Ralph says, the people that you elect to run your country are puppets. The people behind the scenes that pull those strings, they don't have your best interests at heart. These authoritarian tyrants want nothing but to see you be a serf, be a slave, be a peasant, while they sit at the top of the pinnacle of power. I don't understand why you'd want it. Like, okay,
I'm going to tell everyone at home.
If you're ruling over like the society of serfs, if I'm a king, and my father was a king and his father before him, and we've got our serfdom, right? And I become a man and I've got my kingdom and stuff. I grew up in a society where chocolate cereal exists, right? But maybe my society doesn't have chocolate cereal, and maybe my serfs would be able to create chocolate cereal if I just let them. So my life would be immeasurably better if I allowed my serfs to have freedom. Would you want to rule over subservient people who could never be better than you because you're the best king? Like, I'm King Jong-il and I can, have the perfect golf game or whatever it is, like, I'm the best person. You can't even come close. I'm the king and you're the serf. Do you want to live in that society? Because I don't want to live in that society. I like having lots of people who have different skill sets, different things that they're interested in. I really like politics, but other people really like other things like marketing, right? And like, I like listening to the marketing guys. I like listening to like the Alan Watts guys. I like listening to other people because sometimes those skills extrapolate into things that I like and it crosses over. And so that diversity of skills, that diversity of competence, that diversity of interest leads to a much more interesting life full of crazy cool things that you can do, like have chocolate cereal or fly on airplanes or whatever it is, whatever technology. Have iPhones, which maybe are a very damaging technology, but you get my point. Things can be made in a society where everyone has their own ideas and nothing's really stupid or thrown out or censored, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas in a society where you have to adhere to a specific ideology, things are worse. I wouldn't want to rule over a society of serfs. I feel like there's better ways, right? But I guess I'm not power hungry. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful